Presented by Raytheon, making the world a safer place.
This week on Campaign 2018 Election Hacking, we examine the threat against our voting machines. There's growing concern over whether hackers could potentially change votes by physically attacking one of these computers.
So this week, CNET senior producer Dan Patterson spoke with Cris Thomas, a hacker who's also known as Space Rogue. He's a cybersecurity researcher at IBM who specializes in election integrity. He explains some of the challenges that go into physically changing a vote.
Well, ideally, probably what would happen is that someone would get a hold of one of those machines before Election Day. Buy it on eBay, steal it, buy it legitimately from the manufacturer. However you would go about getting that system. Then you would pull it apart, research it, try to figure out where the vulnerabilities are and what attacks are valid against it. Then on Election Day or before Election Day, you would need physical access to that machine to carry out your attack. And then hopefully you could change a few votes.
All right, Dan Patterson joins us now with more insight on this. Okay, so it doesn't seem particularly easy, and he's sort of speculating as to what you could do to hack one of these machines, but sort of break down the vulnerabilities when it comes to these machines. And I guess obviously they're different in different states, so there's probably different types of vulnerabilities, I presume?
Yeah, so every state is different. But it's important to remember that voting machines are just voting computers. And in many cases, these are old computers, old hardware running old software. So they're incredibly vulnerable in the same way your home PC is vulnerable to attacks. And in many cases, you can physically access the device, pop it open, insert a USB drive, access the administrative mode. So individual machines are very vulnerable. But it's important to remember that these systems are not networked. They're not connected to the outside internet, preventing external or network type of attacks.
So how resilient is our current voting system to a physical hack like the one you're describing?
Thomas actually had a fantastic answer to that. Let's check it out.
One of the benefits of our system is that the fact that it's so distributed, it has a very large attack surface. That makes it a little bit more resilient than if it was just one system everywhere, because that forces an attacker to then study and learn the vulnerabilities in each different, not only the physical hardware, but also the policies and procedures in place in that area. That makes it very difficult for an attacker to conduct a widespread attack against a voting election. If we nationalize the elections and consolidate into one or two or three different systems, that greatly reduces the attack surface and gives an attacker that much more of an advantage. In addition, the Constitution says that elections are a responsibility of the states. So if we nationalize those elections, we have to take that into account.
So another brilliant sort of, move by our founding fathers, giving the states the authority to conduct elections, even national elections at the statewide level that are the responsibility of the states, is something that actually has helped in terms of preventing attacks like this.
Yeah, so the founders kind of built resiliency into the system, and we see that diversity in the election machines themselves. So although there is some consolidation in the computers that run different voting machines in different districts, they're still pretty diverse, and that means that, just like Thomas said, you have to research the vulnerabilities in each one. Now, many of these vulnerabilities are widely known, they're widely distributed, but once again, in order to attack an entire election, you have to attack individual and specific machines. So again, it's really easy to attack a particular one specific machine or system, but a coordinated attack would take a lot of effort.
So then, ultimately, what sort of impact could hacking one or two machines physically, what sort of impact could that have on an election?
On an individual election, not a ton. You might be able to change a couple votes, a couple hundred votes, maybe even a couple thousand votes. But Thomas and every single cybersecurity expert I've spoken with emphasizes that the real point of this is to undermine the faith and confidence in the American electoral system. So just like we discussed last week with influence campaigns, the point isn't necessarily to change one particular vote. It's to make sure that we feel this sense of insecurity or uncertainty about our elections. But Thomas said, and again, every cyber expert I've spoken to has said the same thing about this, that look, these are your friends. The polling places are your neighbors. They're individuals that you know. So not only are they there to monitor, literally to watch what's happening at the polling place, but they're people that you interact with on a regular basis. These are not strangers. And again, Vlad, just like you said, this was kind of a brilliant tactic that was baked into the American system at the very inception.
Yes.
So, we've been talking about physically attacking these voting, machines, because just to make it clear, you couldn't attack them in a cyber way because they're not connected to the internet and they're not connected to each other. There's no Bluetooth.
Remotely, right. So some of the machines do transmit data via Bluetooth, but again, it's very, very difficult to have a remote attacker on the outside attack these machines. But all computers, again, we should always emphasize, all computers are vulnerable, and with every voting system, we need to make sure that there's a paper backup audit trail.
Dan Patterson, thank you very much.
Thanks, Dan.
Well, for more on Dan's reporting on this, you can check out cbsnews.com/election hacking. Our election hacking series continues next Wednesday. We'll speak with Dan about how hackers can use the dark web to influence an election. That's next Wednesday right here on CBSN. We'll be right back.